name's Aaron Goldstein. I'm a producer and musician, and I operate out of this studio that I own and operate in downtown Toronto called Baldwin Street Sound. I make a lot of records here, and I play on a lot of records here, and I'm going to answer some questions for you. I think the overarching thing to note is that, first of all, there are really no rules with regard to how you achieve your first recording or any recording. And the reality of the music business today is that most people have already made a recording if they own a phone or if they have a computer or anything like that. I mean, people are recording themselves a lot more readily nowadays. And there's lots of examples of records that have been made and have found an audience and have reached a lot of people, in fact, that were made with fairly primitive tools. And that dates back even before computers. But presuming that we're talking about going into a professional studio for the first time, and presuming that you are either a songwriter with just doing your own thing, or maybe you're part of a band, there's a few things that are important that I think would probably apply across all sessions. First of all, making sure that the material is finished from a compositional point of view. Like, are you done writing your songs? In most cases, when you're coming into a studio like this, where I record bands and instruments and things like that, you don't want to waste time that you're paying for here by finishing any of the composition. I mean, there's always changes that get made, and if you work with a producer like me, then you might find yourself rearranging things and things like that. But it's a good idea to make sure that you're really happy and you've really fleshed out all the compositional stuff. And then, especially if you are a band, like a unit that's coming in to play live instruments here, then it goes without saying you want to really be well rehearsed by the time you get in here. There's all these stories starting from the dawn of rock and roll about records that got made very quickly and went on to succeed, and that's still totally possible, but that you have to remember that was an era where people were really meticulous about rehearsing their act, and there was no they didn't have smartphones to distract them, and they didn't have YouTube to fall into for hours, and they didn't have a lot of television and stuff like that, and they really gave it the time, put in the work that was necessary in order to get their material where they wanted it to. And I think it's important to take that kind of mentality to really put in the work in all aspects of our business, of the music business, I mean. And I'm hesitant to call it the music business, but in all aspects of music, it is really important to work really hard at your art, because nobody is forcing you to do it other than you. So it is a good idea to make sure that you are well rehearsed, that you're ready to show up and do your best, and that your songs are finished or pretty well finished to your satisfaction. I think that's a good basis for a good first session as a band. I should mention that there's lots more sessions these days that are outside of my realm. Like, I tend, again, to record bands, instruments, that kind of thing. But there are tons and tons of sessions that happen between a songwriter or a singer-performer and a person who does something like my job, who is sometimes called a producer or is another composer or is a beat maker or something like that. And in that case, sometimes it is more acceptable to bring in fragments of songs, and then you work on them with the person in my chair, and then perhaps it becomes a co-write or whatever. But it's a good idea to ascertain the nature of what you're going to do before you arrive on day one. It should be it should go without saying that there's an agreement between you and the person who is going to record you or is going to produce you, what each of you hopes the other will bring to the table. Because there are a million ways to make a song, and some people like to make a song on their own. And some people like to make a song with a lot of different writers, and there's really no right way, and it all sort of happens in different ways. It has happened that, well, it happens a lot actually, that you may have a band and you may sound amazing in your jam space, and you might be really happy with how things are going, and then you'll come in here and you'll get your first couple of takes, and you will be surprised at maybe the way one of your bandmates is performing, or the way you are performing, or just the product as a whole. Once you get the microscope on certain aspects of things, sometimes you might find yourself disappointed. There's this common thing that we call demoitis, which is when you have a version of a song, and it might be like, something you recorded on your phone in your jam space, or in the old days you might have like a cassette that you made or whatever, and you get really attached to everything about that performance, including some of the sounds, even though they would be traditionally imperfect or whatever. You might be really attached to how that sounds, and then you come into a studio, and even if it's whether it's better or worse, it would be different than what you had before, and it might make you feel like you're doing something wrong and you wanted to return to the way that it was. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is a good idea to sort of just take the process as it comes, and allow yourself to make changes to things, and to hear things differently. I mean, if things are all of a sudden a lot more under the microscope here in the studio, and if the drums sound a lot more clear and a lot more defined and things like that, but then it becomes evident that your drummer may not be amazing, well, maybe your drummer's imperfections are something that is cool about your band, or maybe it's working for what you do. It's not there's no, at least in my studio, there is no emphasis on perfection, because that's foolish. Really, we just try to get something on tape or on hard drive that makes us feel something, that makes us feel good. And that's usually not something that is necessarily perfect. It's usually, those two things are usually different from one another, but you never know. Every session is different. So in general, when approaching a new session, I would say allow yourself the openness to to hear your material in a new way. Let the person who's steering the session take it to a place that is good for the both of you. You know what I mean? Well, if you're looking to get into a business or a career that on its face is immediately profitable, or a smart business decision, you've made the wrong choice. Which is not to say that you can't succeed in this business. There are many people who do succeed, and I maintain that there are many, many people who have careers outside of, the most popular music. There's tons of people who are like totally happy and doing okay, making music that is just, one rung or two rungs below the brightest, shiniest stuff out there. That said, virtually everybody who does this kind of work is a freelancer, and so by that nature, freelancing is an incredibly difficult way to live. It's, feast and famine. You have to sacrifice all kinds of things. You find yourself missing, your friends' events, and at the very least, you will watch other people who you grew up with take a more traditional career path and, become whatever it is they become, professionals in whatever category, and start to achieve these, life's milestones, and you may not quite be there because this business just, throws you around like an angry sea. I'm pleased that I did what I did and that I do this now, and I love it, and I'm happy, and I'm reasonably successful at it, to the point that it satisfies me and my family. But it's definitely a different sort of life, and one that thankfully is becoming a little more common across multiple industries. There are lots more freelancers. There are lots of people who work contracts, and so it makes it's more understandable to a larger group of people. But you'll find yourself sacrificing all kinds of things because you have to do what's good for you and what's good for your career, and you have to chase things and do things and go and play South by Southwest for zero money year after year, or every time you have a record out, or you do all kinds of things that your friends might think seems cool to do until you tell them that it's costing you money to do them, and then it sounds insane. Anyway, just be prepared for a real roller coaster, but it can be really rewarding if your heart is in it. That's sort of a case-by-case thing. In general, I advise people to try and hang on to their masters, to the I should be more clear, the ownership of their master recordings. So when you write a song, you're the composer and you own the publishing rights to that song. So in other words, any way that you want to, it dates back to the days when they would publish sheet music. So if you were the composer and you wanted to publish the sheet music for your song that you composed, you had the full right to do that, unless you engaged in a publishing contract or something. Meantime, when you record that song, the actual recording of that song is the master recording, and in general, the person who pays for the recording session is the owner of the master recording. So in general, it's advisable as an artist to hang on to your masters as much as you can. However, most record deals these days are going to want either the entire master or half or some portion, and there's all different ways that they might give it back to you after some years, or they might never, or it's hard to say. And it's not that those deals should be avoided, because in some cases they can be very beneficial to you as an artist. It's just a matter of weighing the options, weighing how a deal like that could benefit you versus how the ownership of your masters could benefit you. Some people opt to give up some ownership or all ownership of their masters early in their careers, because they're banking themselves on having a longer career with lots of compositions, and then by the time you get a few records in and you have a little more money to yourself and you can afford to fund your own record and things like that, then you might opt to try and buy back your old masters or whatever. So yes, in general, I would say try to avoid giving up too much of what is rightfully yours, but then again, there are lots of scenarios where some kind of negotiation on that front could help you. It's really a case-by-case thing. So I guess what I'm saying is seek out good advice from people who seem like they have been doing this a long time across all different areas of the business. There are people who have been at this for a long time, longer than me, and some of them have some great advice. I guess seek those people out, and then seek more people out and make your best judgment based on what people tell you. The last thing I'll say is, as I said at the beginning, where I said there's no real rule or no real there's no rule as to how how a recording session should go. There really are no rules as to how you should make your record or how you should market it or how it should come out or anything like that. People think there are rules until some record comes along and does something totally different in it, and that works, and then that becomes one of the acceptable things to do. Truthfully, there's no rules. You should be true to yourself, true to your art above all. If you make the best and most honest art, it will reach people. I mean, it should be reasonably good too, but it will reach people, and they will understand without you having to say so or without you having to signal it. They will understand how honest your art is. And then if somebody thinks that you can make a buck at it too, and they want to work with you on that, then that's great too, and you should go for it. But really, it's all about making the best art that you possibly can and doing your best with it. I wish you luck. Thanks for listening.